esteemed panelists, my dear friends Abbasasi and other members from Asian Confluence. Thank you very much. I offer my sincere gratitude for having been there. I mean, for including me in the panel. Well, basically, I would like to focus on Indo-Pacific Initiative and India's Northeast, essentially a viewpoint from the region. But first, I would like to focus on certain areas. Then I would like to come certain concerns and certain issues that I would like to flag off for a better relationship in the days to come. Well, I think Japan's engagement in India's Northeast is based on, as I look at it, five important principles. The first is, it will enhance a process of democratization of international politics. The way I look at it, it is a very important pillar in terms of enhancing the democratization process of international politics. Secondly, it will also a huge infrastructure and economic development in the region, but it has certain concerns, as I say, and I'll raise this issue. And thirdly, as I look at it, Japan's role in India's Northeast will ensure larger regional economic integration with the neighboring countries, and which will ensure, as I said, inclusive collective development in the region, which is so much essential because so far we believed in silos, so far that kind of integrated, cohesive approach was conspicuous by its absence. But I believe Japan will play a very determining role in terms of connecting those gaps in terms of regional development. My fourth point is that Japan's initiative will create a convergence between Act's policy and Japan's free, open Indo-Pacific initiative. It will create a kind of convergence. And my last point is that it will also strengthen the security concerns of both the countries, and it will ensure a meaningful space for the Northeast region. Now, why Northeast region is, as many, including Honorable Chairperson, has talked about the importance of the region, because this region, Northeast India, which is a conglomerate of 8 Indian states, I mean, with more than 270 ethnic groups and more than 150 languages, is perhaps the most heterogeneous region in the country. And it is said that as we come to Assam is the last point, that India looks less and less India and more Southeast Asia. And, so we have those huge diversity with more than 270 ethnic groups and linguistic groups, and having their very organically they're connected with the Southeast Asian tribes. Majority of these 270 tribes that I have referred to have had their origin with China, have had their origin in Myanmar, Thailand, so on and so forth. So when you come to Northeast India, you will see this is another Southeast Asian culture, food habit, customs, way of life, marriage, and so on and so forth. So, and all of us know that this region was landlocked after the independence period, but thanks to Lucas policy with its new avatar of ACTIS, that the region is now being connected with the neighboring countries. Now, when I talk about democratization of international politics, I would like to speak a few words, then I'll come to the other points. It's because the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, I think it's a very key factor for stability and prosperity of international community, a dynamism that is created by combining two continents. All of us know it, that is Asia and Africa. And it has huge potential growth. And also it talks about two oceans, free and open Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. And it will broaden also its the horizon of Japanese economic policies and economic opportunities in the days to come. And it will also improve connectivity between Asia and Africa. I do not want to go into that, with ASEAN as the hinge of two oceans, and promote stability and prosperity in the region. And in the process, in contrast to a different kind of paradigm, international political paradigm that we have, where arbitrary or non-compliance with the international political norms becomes a very important factor. But in contrast to that, such kind of initiative is inclusive. Madam has also talked about it. It's based on rule of law and respect for mutual sovereignties. I think that should be the cardinal principle of organizing international politics. Now, coming to infrastructure, it is not that it's a kind of win-win situation as I look at it, because Northeast India was, not in the ambit of Delhi's policy preferences, whether we like it or dislike it, till about, 90s, if I may say so. There's a concept called tyranny of distance. Even the Northeastern people used to call that, New Delhi is the stepmotherly attitude. That's a kind of, stepmotherly attitude that people, a lot of ethnic groups talked about, the distance between the geographical, mental, psychological distance between New Delhi and Northeast India. But now that tyranny of distance has been actually breached by a lot of initiative with the launching of Actis policy. And Japan in this grade, I mean, in this case, they have two intentions. Number one, to catch the global infrastructure market, because today infrastructure is emerging as a very important global economic, factor, instrument in the geostrategic dimension. That is number one. Also, China factor is there in order to balance China's gradual investment for Belt and Road Initiative. I think Japan is also coming in a huge way. And Japan's focus on expanded partnership for quality infrastructure has already been highlighted. And I do not want to go into that. And given India's economic outlook, growing market, and rising strategic importance, Tokyo recognizes the value of investing in India, and also Northeast becomes the pivotal, Northeast becomes the epicenter of those investment. And Madam Chairperson talked about the transformative relationship. I do agree with you, ma'am. And it is not only just the Fulbari Bridge, which is the connecting with the help of not only Japan, ADB is also there. But I look at it, five, transformative economic initiative with the help of Japan. The first one I would like to call the NH54, that is connecting Aizawl and Tuipang in Mizoram. That would also advance the Kaladan multimodal transport corridor, and it will connect it. The second initiative, NH51, that is to Tura to Dalu in Meghalaya, that will again connect to Bangladesh. Then third is NH40, that is will connect Shillong to Dauki, again connecting to Bangladesh. Then of course we have talked about Dhubri Fulbari Bridge, which I believe is a very transformative economic initiative that has been taken, connecting three states, and also would enhance our economic relationship with Bangladesh. And fifth initiative, as I look at it, is the Jilefu or Gelepu Dalu corridor in collaboration with Asian Development Bank. So along with other water projects, I think these are five huge investment that is coming from with the help of Japan. And of course Japan is also coming in a huge manner and collaborating with IIT in a lot of linguistic and other areas. And we are talking Guwahati University is also having some initiative with Japan. And also in food processing, I do not want to go into that. Now, how this process will enhance regional cooperation, because all these roads that I had talked about, as said, Northeast India's 99% border with South and Southeast Asian countries. So all these projects will not only benefit, Assam, Northeast India in general, but also it will connect the Southeast Asian and other South Asian countries. And of course, Myanmar, already it has been talked about how Japan has huge economic investment in Myanmar. And also it will enhance our relationship with ASEAN, particularly in Thailand. Japan is cooperating from a special economic zone, particularly in the food processing sector. I believe it will also augment, because this is one area the Northeast cannot go, lock, stock, barrel for all infrastructural huge development. Of course, we need infrastructure, but food processing, I believe, will be a very critical variable for eco-sensitive zones of Northeast India, because there are many biological hotspot zones. People of the region are not ready to compromise those issues. So I believe food processing and food industry will be a very critical variable in the days to come. And Japan has a very strong presence in the neighboring countries. So, big vision that Madam has talked about, and Myanmar, already this regional integration plan is coming up. So it is a kind of win-win situation. It's not that only Northeast will benefit. It is both for Japan also. It is very critically important. And to keep India that is resilient and market-wise, which is very much booming market, for Japan also, it's, I would say, win-win situation that is emerging in the region. And my next point is that the convergence of Act East policy and Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific area. Now this region is important not only for Tokyo's free and open Indo-Pacific vision, which aims to ensure the sea lanes of communication should remain free and open and secure, and countries should stick to rule-based order, but also New Delhi's Act East policy, which aims to reinvigorate its ties with South and Southeast Asian countries. Now, it is a chance for New Delhi, for us to convey, I think, we cannot possibly deny this security dimension. I mean, it's a message, subtle message to Beijing also, and its claim over Arunachal Pradesh. I think those people who have visited those areas can understand the subtle and the kind of sensitivity that people of the border region face with a Chinese counterpart. So I think this free and open Indo-Pacific vision is also a subtle message to China. And already Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in his first term, I think he said, and I quote, "The Pacific and the Indian Oceans are now bringing about a dynamic coupling as seas of freedom and of prosperity," and unquote. So a broader Asia vision is emerging. However, while implementing those policies, implementing those infrastructure driven, because all of a sudden the region is witnessing huge infrastructural, whether it is Asian Highway, Caledon Multimodal Project, even in terms of connectivity, you see transformative changes occurring in the region. But however, there are certain concerns. What are those concerns? Let me tell you. First, you know, from 1947 till about the opening of economy or the launching of Act East policy, this region was dubbed as a security door. It's a landlocked area. Whether it's a kind of in the hindsight whether this kind of economic opportunities, economic development, along with the security consideration, will again bring back that security anxieties. Because if you look at why Northeast India was projected as a very sensitive, even in fact, it was put under Ministry of External Affairs initially. Then later on, it was shifted to Ministry of Home Affairs. So should it again be given to a kind of security predominance? That is what is we are worried about in the so-called tangle or the fight in the Quad, or Asia Pacific, whatever you call it. So will Northeast be the corridor in security corridor, number one. Number two, infrastructure driven economy is important, but whether it will jeopardize the sensitive economic ecozone, because as I said, there are many hotspots, biologically sensitive zones in the area. So people are very much apprehensive with the developmental process. If you look at even the hydel projects, there are a lot of 140 hydel projects are going on in Arunachal, but today many of them have not taken off. What? For example, the Suwansiri project, and now the entire project cost has been, it's galloping. Why? Because there's a huge civil society unrest and agitation going on against this kind of mega project. So what I intend to say is that it should not be parachuted from New Delhi. It should not be parachuted from the above. We need to take those border people. We need to take the civil society into confidence. That is, I think, very, very critical. And my third point is that we need some convergence, because there are a lot of developmental activities taking place, whether it is Asian ADB, World Bank, or even JICA, Japan. There are a lot of actors are working, and many of them are overlapping. I think we need convergence of these developmental agencies regarding their developmental projects. And my fourth point is that Northeast has not yet benefited from the Act East policy. If you look at the statistics, the total trade, allotment, the share between Northeast India, India's volume with the neighboring countries, so far as Northeast India's share is concerned, it is less than 1%. So it is Petropol, it is West Bengal, which is getting the lion's share even today. So we need to get something, perceptible change or some kind of trade share. How does it happen? I think time will come. And there are ethnic tensions, as I said. My urge to the to Japanese people, and as well as to our New Delhi, is that there should be more focus on training of human resources and service sector. Why is it so? Because many people believe that Northeast Indian states will again remain bystander, whether the way it was, parachuted from New Delhi in previous occasions, whether the Act East policy or Japan's involvement or this kind of initiative will percolate it down to the grassroots people. So that is why I believe the training of human resources will be very critical, and focus on service sector will be very, very critical. And but fortunately, madam, one thing I'd like to tell, Japan has a huge psychological acceptance in the states of Northeast India, and its contribution in the war memorial, that building
That's
and
right.
that memorial has also created a lot of positive vibes in the minds of the ethnic communities of the region. So there is a psychological acceptance of Japan. So I believe these are some of the issues that I thought I should flag it up, and I would end it here. Thank you so much, ma'am.